Hello, and welcome back to Banjo Strings and Drinking Gourds, How American Culture Came to Be, the podcast of the Frontier Culture Museum of Virginia. We're finally back with a new season, and today we are bringing you some very interesting local folklore, local to the Valley and to Staunton in particular. So, sit back, kick back, pop open whatever fall beverage you like. If you have a pumpkin latte or if you have some hot cider, it's the time to get that now and listen to some of these interesting local stories.
One of Staunton's most notable establishments throughout its history has been the train station or train depot. Since the first train came chugging through in 1854 from Charlottesville to Staunton, people and freight have benefited from this efficient mode of transportation. Warehouses were built for storing freight across the street from this pre-Civil War terminal. Travelers appreciated a good night's rest in the American Hotel adjacent to the train depot. So, since Staunton was known as a hub of transportation, it attracted the attention of both Union and Confederate armies in the 1860s. Staunton was an army depot, a commissary post, and a training center for both armies at one time or another. In 1864, when General Hunter took over the city of Staunton, he burned the train depot to the ground. He was hoping to cut the enemy off from communication and supplies. Several Confederate soldiers died in this attack. Another Confederate soldier was struck and killed at the station earlier in the war because he was too drunk to see or know where he was going. And spirits of drunken Confederate soldiers have been known to stumble along the tracks ever since. General Hunter burning the train depot is not the only catastrophe to befall the Staunton train station over the course of 150 plus years. A new train depot was built after the Civil War. And then catastrophe number 2 hit on April 26, 1890. About 2 miles from the Staunton depot, the brakeman very carefully applied the brakes for the train coming into town. But the train did not slow down. And it was going along the 80-foot drop of twisting and turning track. Passenger cars started tilting as they hit the curve, removing the wheels from the track. And this is when the conductor completely lost control of the train, propelling the cars straight into the terminal lobby. Whereupon the Staunton train depot collapsed entirely. Splintered pieces of the depot went through train windows and toppled a sleeping car. Sadly, 17-year-old Myrtle Ruth Knox, a telegrapher turned opera singer, perished when a 3-foot splinter from the station was pushed the entire length of her left leg, and another splinter pierced the femoral artery in her right leg. An apparition of Knox, dressed in a nightgown, can be seen wandering around the platform. Her spirit is known for singing and pulling the hair of female travelers. In 1902, a third Staunton train station was built by T.J. Collins that was used until 1960. Historic Staunton Foundation renovated the station in 1989, and a restaurant, the Pullman, occupied the former station until 2004. Still, on a dark, starless night, one can see strange lights, spooky shadows, and hear ghostly voices. Is it the apparition of a drunken Confederate soldier stumbling along trying to find his way back to his unit? Or is it Myrtle's singing you hear, or you feel the ever so slight tug on your hair? The Staunton train station can be quite ghostly at night, being one of the most haunted places in Staunton. So beware.
The Jack Tales that I picked to talk about is called Jack and the Northwest Wind. And about 30 years ago at the museum, we had a really good storyteller who was a little bit of a legend in town. His name was Max Swift. He was the local high school teacher. He took part in community theater and was a brilliant storyteller. And he used to tell this all the time. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago, so I do this in memory of Mac. And he did such a good job 30 years ago. I still can remember this story almost word for word. And it goes something like this. Jack and his mother lived on a rickety old house up on the hills somewhere out west from here. They were doing pretty well. Jack's older brothers had just recently left the house and his father had passed away. And Jack was a good worker. He did all his chores, chopped all the wood, and for most of the time Jack and his mother lived very well. Except when winter came, because the house was rickety. And usually things started off fine, but every once in a while that northwest wind would start howling. And that northwest wind was so bad it would just shake the house. And there were so many holes in the house that the wind would get into the house. And sometimes it would almost put the fire out in the hearth. And one day after Jack couldn't sleep at night, just got up and told his mother and said, I've got to do something about this northwest wind. And his mother looked at him and said, and what are you going to do about that, Jack? And Jack said, I am going to go and find where the northwest wind is coming from, and I'm going to plug up the hole with this old hat of mine, and that should stop it. And Jack's mother looked at him, being slightly more practical than Jack, and said, couldn't you think of a better way to solve the problem, like fixing the house? And Jack thought long and hard about this and said, well, the hammer's broken because Tim, his older brother, had broken it cracking walnuts, and the nails, they were all rusty, and the boards in the barn were slightly rotted. So Jack was saying, no, I think going to find where the northwest wind comes from and plug the hole is the thing to do. And Jack's mother looked at him and said, well, all right, you should leave tomorrow. So Jack, in preparation for his big journey, cut a lot of firewood so his mom would have enough wood for the next few days. His mom made him a good lunch, and off he went the next day in search of the northwest wind. And he traveled farther and farther out across and headed in the northwest direction. He passed a home where 3 boys were playing, but he went right on by. And then eventually he came to an old man in the road. And the old man seemed to know him and said, Jack, what are you doing? And Jack said, I'm off to plug to stop the northwest wind from coming. I'm going to plug the hole with my hat. And the old man looked at Jack and said, Jack, I wouldn't do that if I was you. Said, you don't know what you're doing. I would go home. And Jack said, no, I'm determined. I'm going to go and do this. And the old man said, all right, Jack, but it's getting late and it's getting cold and you're going to freeze. Why don't you come to my house and I'll cook you dinner and you can spend the night and you can go the next day. And Jack thought about it and saw that the sun was going down and said, yes, that's a good idea. So he went to his house, had a good meal, and the next day the man said, well, Jack, here is a magical tablecloth. And he said, and this is how it works. He put it on his table and he said, spread, tablecloth, spread. And a huge meal appeared. So Jack and the old man ate breakfast. And then they cleaned it all up, folded up the tablecloth, and he gave it to Jack and said, Jack, if you don't go and find the northwest wind, go, I will give you this tablecloth. And Jack thought about it and said, well, this might make my life easier and my mom's life easier. And he said, sure. And so he took the tablecloth and he was very appreciative and thanked the old man. And as he was leaving, the old man said, when you pass that house with 3 boys, don't stop. They're up to no good. And Jack said, sure, and thanked him again, and he went on his way. And as he went past the house, the 3 boys started following Jack and asking him and saying, hey, stop and play. And Jack was kind of thinking, well, that might be fun. And before he knows it, he was playing games with the 3 boys, and he couldn't help himself. He told them about the magical tablecloth. And the boys were making fun of him, saying, no, that couldn't be true. You're wrong. And Jack said, yes, it is. And so they went into the house, put the tablecloth on the table, and Jack said, spread, tablecloth, spread. And a huge feast appeared. And the boys and Jack ate it. And the boys were so impressed by this, they said, Jack, you have to stay the night. When our daddy comes home, you have to show him. And Jack's convinced and said, oh, sure, I'll do that. And sure enough, the dad came home. They had another feast. And that night, as Jack is sleeping, the boys came and stole the tablecloth and replaced it with one that looked just like it. The next morning, Jack went on home, went to his mom and said, Mom, I couldn't get to the northwest wind, but look, I have a magical tablecloth. Put it on his table and said, spread, table, spread. And nothing happened. And Jack said, wait, let me try again, and said, spread, tablecloth, spread. And nothing happened. And his mom rolled his eyes and said, oh, Jack, and said, well, it's not a total loss. And she made a shirt out of it and gave it to Jack. And so Jack was kind of mumpy and grumpy for the next week. And after a while, the northwest wind was continuing. They were still freezing cold. And finally, Jack said, that's it. I'm going to really this time stop the northwest wind. So he chopped a lot of wood. His mom made him a good lunch, and off he went. Kept on going, past the house with the three boys. And this time he said, you know what? I'm going to try to avoid the old man. And so he sort of skirted around where he saw him and went further than he's ever gone before in his life. And sure enough, he saw the old man. In fact, the old man even surprised him and said, Jack, what are you doing here again? I told you not to come this way. And Jack said, the tablecloth didn't work. I tried to get a meal out of it and nothing happened. And the old man said, Jack, you stopped where the three boys are, didn't you? And Jack said, yes, I did. And he said, they stole your tablecloth, Jack. What were you thinking? Well, I told you not to do that. And Jack said, well, I'm sorry. And he said, but I now need to go and stop the old northwest wind. And the old man said, well, Jack, it's too late. It's too dark. It's going to be too cold. You're going to freeze. Why don't you spend the night again at my house and you can start in the morning? And Jack looked at the sun going down and realized that the old man was right. So he went back to his house. They had a good old feast. And the next morning, and as he was getting ready to leave, the old man said, Jack, here's a rooster, but look at this rooster. And he put the rooster on it and he said, come, gold, come. And the rooster laid a golden egg. And Jack was surprised. And the old man said, Jack, try it. So Jack said, come, gold, come. And the rooster laid another golden egg. And Jack said, this is the most amazing thing ever. And the old man said, Jack, it's yours. Go on home. Leave the northwest wind alone. And Jack said, yes, sir. And he said, and he appreciated the rooster and thanked him, and he went on his way. And as he was leaving, the old man said, don't stop where the three boys are. They're going to steal your rooster. Keep going home. And Jack said, yes, sir. And he went on. And again, the three boys came up to him. And again, they were playing such a fun game that Jack couldn't help himself. And before long, he was playing the game with him. And then that night, he couldn't help himself, and he had to tell the boys what this rooster could do. And he said, come, gold, come. And the rooster laid a couple of golden eggs. And the boys were really impressed. And they say, Jack, you have to stay. We have to show our daddy this rooster. This is the most amazing thing. And Jack said, sure. And they did that. The old dad came home. They got more gold eggs. The dad found a really good cage for the rooster, and before Jack knew it, he had fallen asleep. And that night, the boys came and replaced the rooster with one that looked almost identical to the rooster that they had just stolen. And Jack went home and was shouting with joy when he saw his mother. Guess what I have? All our problems are solved. We have a rooster that will give us golden eggs. And his mother rolled his eyes again and said, yes, Jack, how does this rooster give us golden eggs? And Jack said, just watch, Mom. Put the rooster on the table and said, come, gold, come. And nothing happened. And then Jack tried again. Come, gold, come. Nothing happened. And the mother said, oh, Jack. But it wasn't a total loss because they killed the rooster and had a good meal that night. And still the old northwest wind came. In fact, it was colder than it had ever been before. And one night it even blew out the fire in the fireplace and they were freezing cold. And Jack said, Mama, I can't take it any longer. I have to go back. So once again, he chopped more wood and headed out northwest to try to stop the wind. And he passed the house where the boys were, and he passed where he saw the old man, and he said, you know what, I'm going to try to really avoid the old man. And he went into the woods, and there was snow on the ground, and it was steep, and it was hard going, but he kept on going. And wouldn't you know it, he came across the old man who was squirrel hunting. And the old man said to him, Jack, you stopped at where the boys were. And Jack said, yes. You no longer have the rooster. And Jack said, yes. And the old man said, Jack, what am I going to do with you? And Jack said, well, I have to stop the old northwest wind. And I said, I'm going to go this time. You can't stop me. And the old man said, Jack, you're cold. You're in the snow. It's getting dark. It's going to be even colder still. Come with me, and we can warm up by my house, and we'll talk about this. And Jack could see that the old man was right, went down to the house, and again, they had a good meal. And the next morning, the old man said, Jack, I have something that you might like. And it was a little club. And he said, watch this club. And he says to the club, play away. Knock up some wood. And the club went to a big, tall oak tree, and he chopped it all up. And before you know it, and stacked the firewood. There was a whole bunch of firewood right there, neatly stacked, ready to go and ready to use. And Jack was thinking, "Wow, I really could use something like this." And the old man said, "Jack, it's yours. You can take it, but you have to use it correctly. You have to be careful with it." And Jack thanked him very much. And the old man said, "Don't come back here again, Jack. Don't try to stop the old northwest wind." And Jack said, "Yes, I won't." And he went. And again, of course, he passed the house with the boys. And again, he couldn't help himself. The game they were playing looked like so much fun. And before he knew it, he was playing the game again with the boys. And finally, he couldn't help himself. He said, "Look at what I have." And he goes, "Play, club, play away. Knock up some wood." And it found a dead old chestnut tree and cut it all up and stacked it neatly. And the boys were amazed because, like Jack, they spent most of their time chopping up firewood all the time. And they said, "You got to stay the night, Jack. We got to show our daddy this. Please stay the night." And Jack said, "Sure." And he fell asleep, but this time tightly holding the club. And the dad came home. It was late at night. The boys didn't want to go outside. It was cold. And they took the club and they said, "Watch." The boy said, "Daddy, watch what this does." And they go, "Play, club, play away. Knock up this piece of wood that's in the fireplace." And it knocked it up. But that also woke up Jack, and Jack could see what was happening. And he got mad. And he shouted, "Play, club, play away. Knock down this whole house. Kill everyone in it if they don't hand me my tablecloth and rooster real quick." And all of a sudden, the club went to town and it started tearing apart the house. And the boys and the dad were running around and they were really worried. And finally they got the rooster and the tablecloth and they gave it to Jack and say, "Please make it stop. Don't kill us." And Jack said, "Stop, club, stop." And the club stopped. And Jack was so thankful that he got all his things back. He left right away, even though it was in the middle of the night. And he arrived back at his house in the next morning and he said, "Mama, look what I have. I've got the rooster that lays the eggs, the tablecloth that provides us meal, and the most incredible thing of all, a club that cuts down trees and stacks firewood." And the mother rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, poor Jack, what am I going to do with you?" And she finally said, "Jack, prove it." And the first thing Jack did is he cleared the table, put the tablecloth on, and said, "Spread, tablecloth, spread." And before you know it, a huge feast appeared. And Mama and Jack ate some breakfast, and they were really happy. And then he brought out the rooster and said, "Come, gold, come." And the rooster laid a couple of golden eggs. And the mom was really happy, thinking this might just solve all her problems. And then they went outside with the club and said, "Play, club, play away, knock up some wood." And it found another old oak tree and cut it all down and chopped it all into firewood and even made some kindling. And Jack and his mama lived happily ever afterwards. A lot of times you can go to their house and you can see they fixed it all up. The northwest wind never gets in, and they seem to be very content and actually very fat. The end.
Driving up to the Frontier Culture Museum, you may notice some substantial, menacing-looking brick buildings. For many of the locals and staff at the museum, we tend to look at these buildings as a piece of dark and wounding history. However, for many visitors, they may gaze up at these deceptively attractive buildings with a mixture of curiosity and unease. What are these buildings and why are they abandoned? I will answer these questions, but before I do, I would like to make a disclaimer. Mental health in the 18th, 19th, and early to mid-20th centuries was not always looked upon as a disease. Abhorrent language and descriptions were used in the past to describe those afflicted. These beliefs and understandings do not reflect the Frontier Culture Museum's current view on mental health. Staunton is a town packed full of mystery, haunted memories, and ghastly history. Many believe that Staunton is a bed of high paranormal activity due to the limestone that runs underneath the city. Limestone, according to paranormal experts, has the ability to release and absorb psychic energy. Whether that is true or not, Staunton certainly has a fair share of stories that makes one not want to look under the bed at night. One story in particular, though, is probably the darkest stain on Staunton's history. The story of Western State Hospital, formerly known as the Western State Lunatic Asylum and the DeJarnette Sanatorium. In the 18th century, immigrant families from Europe sought new opportunities in the Shenandoah Valley. Disembarking from ships in Pennsylvania, these families loaded up small carts and wagons to prepare for a long journey to the Valley of Virginia. The Europeans used the same trail as the indigenous peoples had been using for hundreds of years to travel up and down the valley for hunting, fishing, and trading with other tribes. This path was eventually called the Great Wagon Road or the Valley Turnpike. Today we know it as modern-day Route 11 and Interstate 81. By the 19th century, this same road bustled with wagons carrying goods, stagecoaches delivering mail, and people migrating up and down the valley. Staunton served as a busy center of life, becoming one of the most vital locations for trade and industry. When the Commonwealth of Virginia became concerned with humanitarian programs, they immediately set their gaze towards Staunton as one of the locations for a mental health treatment center. The facility opened in 1828, becoming the second mental health facility in the state. Patients initially admitted had to go through a screening process to determine their level of endangerment or moral indecency. Treatment in the 18th and 19th century for the mentally ill was either inhumane or non-existent. The goal of early mental health facilities was to limit damage caused to functioning members of society by those afflicted with mental illnesses. Those afflicted were often neglected by family members or forced into prisons or almshouses. Early treatments included solitary confinement, bounding patients in straitjackets or shackles, and physically abusing the patients. One of the early physicians in colonial mental health was none other than Dr. Benjamin Rush. Yes, that Dr. Benjamin Rush, also known as the father of psychiatry. Dr. Rush theorized that mental illnesses were caused by interruptions in the blood circulation. Therefore, he encouraged bleeding to alleviate these interruptions. Rush, however, did shed some enlightened conjectures on alcoholism as a disease, and he advocated for more humane facilities. Despite his lofty efforts, many facilities continued to treat the mentally ill poorly, and so many mental health advocates began lobbying state governments for cleaner and more humane facilities, hence Western State Hospital. Dr. Francis Stribling was the first appointed director in 1840. Dr. Stribling embraced the concept of moral treatment, a psychosocial approach to mental health deriving from religious and moral beliefs of the 19th century. Moral treatment advocates included Dorothea Dix, who sought to make mental health a public concern and spoke on behalf of prison reform as well. Moral treatment supporters believed mental health facilities should be a retreat for patients. So Dr. Stribling, along with Thomas R. Blackburn, constructed a hospital that was deemed more a resort than a hospital. Lush pleasure gardens and large open-air spaces peppered the facility to create a more relaxing environment for the patients. In fact, legend goes that Western State Hospital looks so pristine that many parents who arrived in Staunton to drop off their daughters at the Augusta Female Seminary, or known today as Mary Baldwin University, mistook Western State Hospital for the seminary. The hospital also built a heavy wrought iron gate all around the campus, which you can still see today. The gate, according to the locals, was not meant to keep the patients in, but to keep locals off the sumptuous lawns. However, by the early 20th century, these early hopes of care and humane practices at Western State Hospital were soon forgotten. Cramped quarters, patient overload, and lack of clean facilities eventually plagued the hospital. Their answer to these problems, they thought, was Joseph DeJarnette. A staunch and austere doctor, DeJarnette was appointed the director of Western State Hospital in 1905. DeJarnette was a significant supporter of racial segregation, eugenics, and sterilization of the mentally ill. He states, "To this class of the unfit belong the insane, the epileptic, the alcoholic, hereditary criminal, the syphilitic, the imbecile, and the idiot, and none of these should reproduce." Under DeJarnette's watch, electroshock therapy and lobotomies, surgical procedures that severed connections to the prefrontal cortex of the brain, were administered to the patients. DeJarnette was so passionate about his beliefs in sterilization that he lobbied the state of Virginia to pass sterilization acts. So, with the help of Governor E. Lee Trinket, DeJarnette managed to get his wish when Virginia passed the Eugenical Sterilization Act in 1924. While we do not have the exact numbers of how many people were sterilized at the hospital, the number is believed to be around 1,700 people. In 1932, DeJarnette decided to open up his own semi-private facility closer to the outskirts of downtown Staunton for upper-middle-class patients. DeJarnette attempted to copy Blackburn's architecture styles, but he opted for a cheaper material, making the building seem grand on the outside but poorly constructed in its bones. DeJarnette maintained that patients should work to stay healthy, so he mandated the patients build the facility along working on a dairy farm to generate income for the facilities. The facility was later called the DeJarnette Sanatorium after the man himself. According to legend, the sanatorium had a rocky start with the locals. Next to the buildings is a small crematorium, most recognizable by its large smokestacks. Large amounts of smoke curled from the hill where it was located into the depths of downtown Staunton. Locals complained of the smoke blackening the sky. Unfortunately, it's led to believe that the smoke was in fact people that DeJarnette may have experimented on. It's been said that DeJarnette was known to roam the hallways and quote Adolf Hitler, so it's no surprise as to the horrors that were probably committed under his supervision. It's estimated that over 10,000 patients died at DeJarnette, while there are only 3,000 unmarked graves at Western State Hospital. Some of these graves are speculated to be pits where bodies were dumped in massive graves. The state eventually caught wind of some of DeJarnette's menacing acts, and in 1943 DeJarnette was removed as director of Western State Hospital due to his poor management style of the facilities and staff. In the 1960s, the DeJarnette Sanatorium was converted to a children's hospital. As for Western State Hospital, the state abandoned the building in the 1970s for their current facilities. The hospital was then converted to a prison but closed in 2003. As for the DeJarnette building, it too was abandoned in 1996 after the construction of the Commonwealth Center for Children and Adolescents. So what happened to these buildings? Western State Hospital was eventually bought in 2008 and converted into condos, and then in 2018, the Blackburn Inn opened its doors. However, the DeJarnette Center remains abandoned. In the 1980s, the state decided to convert the dairy farm to a museum, known today as our beloved Frontier Culture Museum. Because the DeJarnette building looms so close to the museum, it almost has become an exhibit in itself. And usually the biggest question posed by visitors is, will anyone do anything with it? The answer is, we don't know. The building remains a painful memory for Staunton, and oftentimes locals would prefer the building be torn down. The state has had several contractors come and look at the property to see if there's any potential, but the building is too far gone in deterioration, and much of the building now has exposed asbestos, which would cost millions of dollars to repair. Many local teens and out-of-town thrill-seekers check the space out today, but keep in mind it is a condemned building and it is illegal to be caught on the property without permission from the state. Some claim the buildings are haunted. Guests at the Blackburn Inn have claimed to have heard footsteps, distressed moans, and blood-curdling cries in the hallways. Residents at the village condos swear they have seen doors slammed shut on their own, and others have claimed misplaced items. Some say that DeJarnette himself haunts his building, screaming the words, "Get out!" Others have seen shadow people, black unhuman-like figures at night, and clusters of red eyes. Whether it's the tragic history of these historic buildings or the tortured ghost inside them, Western State Hospital is a place of lingering trauma for the residents in the building, Staunton locals, and those who carry memories of the hospital before mental health reform. Joe Fowler writes in the Piedmont Forum, "Whether DeJarnette stands or falls, the past will remain to learn from. While the buildings remain, it stands to inspire a search for deeper understanding. If the building falls, many will miss it. There are those among the many who will continually search for the gushing wounds of America's past in order to expose a history that they would rather not risk repeating.
One of the more interesting and enduring stories in the area is that of how Betsy Bell and Mary Gray, two local hills or mountains, got their name. In Perth, Scotland, there's a legend about two hills that are named Betsy Bell and Mary Gray, located about 7 miles northwest of Perth. The story goes that in 1645, plague swept the country. Two heiresses were secluded to a wooden bower due to the plague, but they were visited by a local boy. No one's really sure which one he was courting. It may have been both. But unfortunately, with the supplies he brought, he also brought the plague. Both of the ladies died, and the Twin Mountains were named for them. This would be a tragic enough, typical Scottish story, but the Scottish Covenanters that went to Ireland, particularly those that went to Ulster, found two similar mountains in County Tyrone, and named them Betsy Bell and Mary Gray as well, bringing a little bit of home to the local area. It gets even more strange, where as the Scot-Irish move into the valley, two twin hills, very similar to those in Perth and in County Tyrone, were found in Staunton. The story was recorded as of 1882 by John Lewis Peyton in his History of Augusta County, and also by Joseph A. Waddell in 1885 in his Annals of Augusta County, obviously making this a very well-known local legend. Peyton's accounting of the legend of Betsy Bell and Mary Gray is thus. These two lofty and beautiful mounts, which rise above the landscape near Staunton, piloting the people from every part of the country to the town, thus derive their names. Sometime in the 17th century, during the prevalence of a plague in Scotland, two young girls, Betsy Bell and Mary Gray, to escape infection, fled from their homes and took refuge in a solitary booth in the Highlands. Here they were often visited by an admirer who carried them supplies. During his visits, he unconsciously communicated the plague to them. Both became ill, both died, and were buried near Perth, where their graves, which were carefully sodded over and attended to by the hands of surviving friends, were long pointed out, and for aught we know to the contrary may still be seen. Their sad fate gave rise to a ballad commencing, Betsy Bell and Mary Gray twa bonny lasses, which has been preserved. This ballad was taken to Ireland by Scotch immigrants, and the names it commemorates given to two hills near Newtown Stewart in the county of Tyrone. The early settlers of Augusta no doubt discovered some resemblance between the Irish mounts and the two lovely hills which dominate Staunton, and affixed these names to them. The ballad mentioned in the account is the original source material for this story. This is, of course, based on Child Ballad number 201. The Child Ballads were a collection of 305 English and Scottish ballads with their American derivatives that were recorded by Francis James Child in the later part of the 19th century. They were published as the English and Scottish Popular Ballads, and many, many old, even back into the medieval or pre-medieval period, ballads were recorded into this collection. And, of course, Betsy Bell and Mary Gray is one of them. The ballad itself starts, "O Betsy Bell and Mary Gray, they war twa bonny lasses. They biggit a bower on yon burn brae, and theek it over with rashes. They theek it over with rashes green, they theek it over with heather. But the pest came from the Burrows town and slew them both together." The story doesn't get much happier after that, talking about how the girls were denied their ancestral graveyard because of the fact that they were plague victims. But if you haven't had a chance to listen to this, definitely have a listen to the Steel Eye Span version. You can find it on YouTube, or also go to our blog on WordPress and follow the link there. The spooky part comes in as local Scottish and Irish tradition has it that the spirits of the girls can be seen on the hills named for them. Whether those spirits moved with their countrymen as they moved into the Valley of Virginia down to Staunton, along with the hills named for them, is entirely another question. So we hope you enjoyed listening to some of the spooky and supernatural local stories, bringing a little bit of the holiday season to you from the Frontier Culture Museum. And the Frontier Culture Museum has a number of really exciting events coming up in the next couple of months. To start with, on Saturday, November 13th, we're having Native American History Day, which is celebrating the accomplishments and influences of Native Americans on American culture. So come check that out. We'll have some members of the Monacan Nation up on our Native site, and they'll be more than happy to talk to you about all things Native. Following that, on Black Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving, we have our Artisan Christmas Fair, in which case a lot of artisans from locally and from further afield will be hanging out in the atrium outside of the visitor center, and will be presenting a lot of their very interesting fine wares. So if you're looking for that last minute Christmas present, come check that out. And last but certainly not least, we have our Old World Holiday Tours, formerly known as Lantern Tours. And this is the family favorite for this holiday time, that the Lantern Tours are an evening program in December, and where the audience members are taken by lantern light on a walking holiday adventure around our Old World Loop to visit the occupants of our historic houses as they prepare to celebrate the season. Old World Holiday Tours are December 3rd through 5th, 10th through 12th, and 17th through 19th, with performances available every half hour from 5:30 to 8:30. Prices for holiday tours are adults are $15, children from 2 to 6 years old are $5, and infants 1 and under are free. So come check out this fun holiday favorite and enjoy the holiday season at the Frontier Culture Museum. So we hope you enjoyed Banjo Strings and Drinking Gourds. We bring you historical content twice a month. You can check out the Frontier Culture Museum online at frontiermuseum.org, on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You'll find background on all the farms at the museum, information on upcoming events, and so much more.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please consider visiting the website and clicking the donate button. Donations to the American Frontier Culture Foundation support programs like field trips, summer camp, and special events. We greatly appreciate it. See you next time.